Amnesia versus Bankikai. Months have passed, and the time has finally come for the members of Bankikai and Amnesia to clash to see who is more worthy to rule the night. But something happened days before this battle. A casual meeting between the members of Amnesia within Gordo's bar. Their topic? To strike Bankikai now, since they have been gaining members fast and have been provoking them for the longest. Before it started though, another person walks in by the name of Roger, one of the original founders of Amnesia and friend to Gordo. At this time, Roger wasn't a member of Amnesia anymore. He decided a while back that he wanted to do more than just fight. So, he left to travel around a bit, but is still treated as a friend of the group. It's even said that when he's around for some nights, he's just there as support for Amnesia. During the meeting, they even discussed potential losses during the fight, even with Hilda, the ultimate paradox, on their team. That's how much of a threat Ogre is, the leader of Bankikai. But Chaos wasn't too worried, even saying how Ogre is indeed dangerous, but in a simple fight with Hilda, she has a 90% chance of winning against him and his monstrous strength. With that said, Gordo then invites Roger to the fight, but Chaos was against the idea. He even admits that he's aware of Roger's strength, but it's just that he's been out of the front lines for a long time. Not to mention, he also said no to Roger, because Bankikai's leaders are only 3 people. Chaos didn't want to go barging in with the mob against Ogre, and for strength reasons, even Gordo understood that if they were to charge in with more than 3 people, it wouldn't be enough to scare Bankikai, and it would make Amnesia look like the shady ones in that fight. They had to show their strength with the current amount of people only, which was Hilda, Gordo, and Chaos. But even Chaos admits he's basically out of the picture, since he's not meant for the front lines. Not to mention, this wasn't a war between the entire members of both groups, this was a battle between the leaders only, Hilda and Ogre. Even Hilda brought up a name of an individual she decided to pick up into the group, and that person was Enkidu. Even on the way to the bar, she was talking to Chaos about bringing him along as well, but even then, Chaos was against his involvement. But explaining to Roger in front of Chaos, Gordo simply said that they needed to just be by Hilda's side during the fight and protect her, if need be. And with that, their meeting came to a close. Chaos and Hilda left, leaving Gordo and Roger to drink in peace. The two finally were able to catch up, but the reason why Roger came back to begin with was to tell Gordo that he's leaving town to finally do what he wanted for a long time, and that was to finally travel the world. With preparations done, he was ready to leave very soon. Roger came back to basically say goodbye to Gordo, but Hilda and Chaos didn't know this. It's not like he had a grudge against them, it's just they're still upset that he denied an offer to join Amnesia, so he felt they didn't like him, but in reality, they still considered him a close friend. Gordo was actually happy to see him doing this. To travel the world wasn't an easy feat, and Roger always liked to travel, even going so far as to call those travels treasure hunts. Even with his power as an in-birth, he never found it appealing itself, but he was curious what the Abyss actually was in the Hollow Knight. The two finally cheered one another, and the day of the fight comes even closer. A few days passed. The members of Amnesia meets up during the Hollow Knight, including Enkidu, cause Hilda still made him tag along. His reasoning was simple: to fight strong opponents. Knowing this, Hilda said that Amnesia had what he was looking for. Enkidu was actually a menacing person, and the aura that came off of Enkidu, Gordo knew that this guy was the real deal, and he actually didn't want any part of fighting against him. They do one more quick breakdown of the situation cause some issues came up. One was Leet Christ themselves. They sent out a spy in regards to this battle. They weren't really targeting the two groups, but Chaos believed they're there to try and prevent the fight. The goal is to control all of EX after all, and prevent its abuse from others. The other thing was that the Abyss was shown tonight. It was apparent because of the aura it was emitting, and it was located in the direction of the mansion. And in that same location was where the members of Bankikai were camping. Ogre, Zohar, and Strix. The group then splits up. Chaos hangs back as support, but really just went to go read a book, while they do all the dirty work. Gordo actually hangs out outside, cause in his words, if there really was a Elite Christ member nearby, he was positive that Elite Christ wanted to get some revenge towards him, since he did take its HQ head on recently, thus leaving Hilda alone. Then we have Hilda with Roger and Enkidu. They were to head into the place where the two leaders would clash, and were to act as support in case one of the other leaders in Bankikai by the name of Zohar, or even by the name of Doppelganger, were to be an issue. Hilda and crew finally made it into the mansion, and within it was a dark red setting, with fog enveloping the entire place. The building was in ruin, but the mansion itself wasn't old, and Bankikai was still outside, until Roger sees that someone broke off and headed behind the mansion. Ogre finally makes his appearance before Hilda, and by his side was Strix. Reason being was cause of her ability. Amnesia called her the Amplifier, as she's able to actually enhance the current ability of an Inbirth. Hilda actually strikes first, and the battle between these two monsters finally began. At the time, Gordo was headed to the mansion, but a sudden explosion of manifestation occurred. At first, he thought it was just Hilda and Ogre fighting, but it was beyond that of normal circumstances. He had a bad feeling regarding the whole situation, especially with the Elite Christ member somewhere while the Abyss being nearby. So with that, he ran towards the mansion as fast as he could. At first, it seemed like an even battle, but as time passed, it was clear as day that Hilda was gonna win. It wasn't cause Ogre was weak by any means necessary, but in terms of power, she had an endless supply to work with. His attacks were weak in comparison to her, even with his abilities being amplified by Strix. But during the fight, Roger spotted a shadow figure, something red and dark. He didn't know if it was a manifestation coming from the Abyss itself, if it was Doppelganger's shadow since she was nowhere to be found from the beginning, or if it was the Elite Christ member. Whoever it was, he didn't like the idea of anyone messing around with the Abyss, especially now of all places with Hilda settling her big fight. He notifies Enkidu by simply saying he was going to check out the Abyss, since the fight was already decided. He doesn't say anything else, and leaves Hilda in his aid. Roger is an adventurer too, and since he was interested about the Abyss, he wouldn't let whoever was there take the treasure in front of his eyes. He walked into a room in the back, looking for this figure he saw, but he was greeted by something else entirely. The Abyss itself. He describes it somewhat like an egg that was basically altering its entire surrounding. Again, he wasn't sure if what he saw came from it or if it was actually someone. He continued to look, but couldn't find anyone. The space surrounding the Abyss was terrifying. It warped everything around it. The air was breaking apart, so much so that even Roger was able to hear the cracking of it. Just standing near it made him dizzy. But even with all that, he was bugged that something was wrong and tried to head back to warn Hilda and Enkidu, but the Abyss was acting up. From the center of it, a dark, smooth tentacle reached across the room, moving like an arm looking for something. Roger tried to run, but he couldn't. The Abyss took hold of the entire area, and the arm was able to catch him. Roger was being consumed by EX, and started making monstrous sounds. It felt like a void latched onto his back, and started controlling him and was awakening something inside of him. But something broke that connection for a second, and Roger regained his consciousness. A woman's voice was heard. She was telling him to get out of there and how she was at her own limit, just trying to save him from the abyss. But it was too late. Gordo finally caught up into the mansion and saw Hilda winning her fight with Ogre. And at the end of it all, both Strix and Ogre were finished. But Hilda found interest in Strix, saying she was the real issue around here because of her ability, and she didn't want to let her go so easily. So she spared her life. The reason why Hilda actually let her live was because it was a favor, and if she needed that favor from Strix, she will actually know when to pay up. And after that, Ogre gave her one last order to find Zohar and to get out of there as fast as possible. Strix agreed and left, leaving Ogre to his fate. Seeing this, Gordo was happy that she won, but still had the bad feeling from earlier. He looked around and saw that Roger was actually nowhere to be found, until he looked down a specific hallway and saw a shadow. He shouted towards it, assuming it was Roger, but as soon as he took a step towards it, Enkidu stopped him. The shadow figure slowly stepped out, and everyone was shocked about who it was. The place Roger belonged to was no longer in that vessel.